Okay. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Hope you have a great afternoon. Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much. I want to welcome everyone to the webinar this afternoon. I want to thank Leadership Connect for inviting me to be a part of enhancing security awareness and preparedness in the public sector, strengthening our defenses. A lot to cover over the course of the program today. We have about an hour, and one of the most important things to me in conducting these programs is that you, the participants, the viewers, get a chance to ask questions of these terrific experts that we have. So I want to encourage you to submit those questions all throughout the course of the program so that I can give them to both Ken and to Bob. I want to introduce those gentlemen to you now. Ken Bible is the Chief Information Security Officer at the Department of Homeland Security and a friend of mine for a long time. Have been privileged to watch the work that he did in the Marine Corps and now at DHS. Ken, welcome. It's great to see you. Bob Nadeau is the Partnerships Branch Chief at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. CISA, of course, at the forefront of cybersecurity protections, but not just inside the federal government, but across the country. And so, Bob, welcome. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining us. Ken, I want to start with you because you were on FedGov Today TV show not too long ago, and we talked about zero trust. And I think, obviously, I'm interested in what DHS is doing specifically regarding zero trust, but I'm also interested in the view that you have within the components of the agencies at DHS and with your colleagues and peers across the federal government about what's happening in zero trust, what the successes that you're hearing about are, what the roadblocks that organizations are having to implementing zero trust, anything along those lines. Any place you'd like to take us, Ken? It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no, great to see you too, Francis. And it's a great question. And as I mentioned to you in your show, we've got a work ongoing, some good work that from the outset, actually for the past probably 3 years, even in advance of the OMB M2209 memo. There was work going on kind of at what I would consider to be the low-hanging fruit. We're all kind of familiar with kind of the how to secure a network, right? And so this idea that came out of COVID of the fact that we can no longer kind of build VPNs and then poke holes through them with mobile devices as we went into telework, that there was a new design paradigm that needed to come about at that network pillar of the 5 pillars that CISA laid out for the federal space for the civilian executive branch. But I think going forward into kind of the natural conclusion, or if you actually pursued everything that was in that M2209 strategy from OMB, it really points to the fact that we're talking about how do we build more effective capabilities to enable the mission faster. And that moves up the stack from just the network and starts to get at how do we start to go build in security at these other pillars of the zero trust strategy. So how do we build it in at the data layer? How do we start tagging data? How do we start to design applications that can take advantage of common identity that allows us to go seamlessly work across the organization? Particularly in DHS, as people want to be able to develop up common understandings of the data. And what you start to see is that if you take the traditional paradigm of kind of building monolithic systems that kind of build their whole requirement set from bare metal up, it's unaffordable, it's unsustainable, and it's really ineffective in terms of delivering on that operational mission capability quickly. So I think there is an understanding across the components of DHS that we really want to try to go take advantage of this zero trust model, this architecture, to get at mission capabilities faster. And my boss, the CIO, Eric Heisen, he comes out of that kind of mission orientation, delivering a capability, mission capability. And I think that's driving us in terms of he's invested in a customer experience organization. We actually stood up a directorate within CIO around customer experience. And so all of this reflects a commitment, not only from him, but I think also the CIOs across the department, and by association, their CISOs, that, hey, this architecture is making a case for change, that by by building differently, by thinking differently about how we secure these capabilities, we can move faster.
Yeah, and that's great insight. And there's a bunch there I want to come back to, especially about sustainability, because you used the reverse of that, unsustainable. And I want to talk about sustainability when we come back. Bob, it's great to see you. Welcome to the conversation. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but one of the things that I know you and your colleagues at CISA have placed an emphasis on is not just talking about promoting cybersecurity during October, but doing it all year round. You have a new Secure Our World initiative underway. What does that mean to the average citizen walking down the street? And what's the message that you think is useful for people inside the federal government, maybe even folks who aren't classified as security professionals, to take away from that campaign?
Hey, thanks, Francis. And it's great to be with you here today. I'm a big fan of Leadership Connect and have been a partner with them for many years throughout my various federal agency background. And yeah, I would say that given that CISA's mission is to safeguard and strengthen the resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure, and where cybersecurity really is where CISA stands at the forefront of partnering with government agencies and private sector organizations and state, local, tribal, territorial governments, the private sector and organizations. How was it that we could also bring the public into this conversation? Where sometimes we're looked at as, oh, the agency that's working cyber with just the critical infrastructure, but really this is about getting people to talk about how to build how to build cybersecurity online, reduce risk online, when we're growing to be an ever-connected digital world. Everything we do, everything we work on, whether at work or at home or even talking to family and friends now, everything's a connected world. So a couple of years ago, our stakeholder engagement division director, Elena Clark, and the director were talking about, how can we start building the conversation so it's not just taking place in October. And over the last year, we really worked hard at coming up with a program that could resonate across the nation, across all demographic groups, resonate with the small, medium-sized business community who is clearly being impacted by numerous cyber threats, and get them to build that conversation, have that conversation every day, talk to family and friends, talk to the employees about how to build stronger cybersecurity footprint online, and how to take simple steps that we can all take to reduce our risk. So that's how Secure Our World came about, is to use in a similar vein to see something, say something on the physical, a terrorist side of ensuring that we're all keeping our eye out for things that might be threats. Secure Our World is a call to action, to change behavior, to take all of us to take actions together collectively to reduce our cyber risk when online, when using connected devices, and to have that conversation every day. It's not just about October. It's something that's intertwined in our lives. It's intertwined in the very behaviors that we take when we're online. So by keeping that conversation going, by emphasizing that all the time, we kind of really make it part of what we do when we're using connected devices. And Secure Our World is really that message that we want people to take as they go about using their phones and using their computers and making purchases online and playing digital games and online gaming, and everything you do has that cyber footprint. So let's be safe when we're doing it.
Is there potentially, Bob, a special place for federal employees, for federal leaders to talk to those folks both in and out of the government about the importance of cybersecurity and the way that cybersecurity now permeates the technology that everybody uses, the way you just described it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we look at our federal agency partners as critical members of our federal family that have a role to play here. CISA is really committed to, on the higher level, working across the federal family to make sure that we're working with our federal partners to, as Ken knows, working throughout not just the DHS components, but across the entire federal spectrum, to ensure that the federal systems are safe and secure? And how can we work to build towards that zero trust model that you had talked about earlier? But also, all of us in the federal family work with
He'll catch up here in a second, I think. While we wait for Bob to get reconnected, Ken, I want to come back to you. You used the word unsustainable, and I want to flip that and go back to sustainability. That word permeates the entire conversation, the entire discussion about cybersecurity today. And I'm not sure that 2 or 5 years ago, certainly not before that, that sustainability was really a huge part of that conversation. What's flipped that, and what does sustainability mean in a cybersecurity world?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. The world has kind of shifted. You know, it used to be you could go say the word cybersecurity. It's like saying boo at Halloween, and everybody kind of runs for their wallet to go throw some money. But
Right.
I think the challenge is that for and legitimately so, there was this sense that, you know, how much do we spend to get to the right level of cybersecurity? But going to what Bob said, you know, now the landscape's bigger, right? So it's really the business functions. There's very few business functions in any organization now that doesn't have some dependency upon technology, and in many cases upon the information communications technology to move data around, to store, process, forward, what have you. And so the landscape's increased in addition to the fact that the costs have continued to go up. So when I talk about it being unsustainable, I mean, flipping the model to say what is sustainable. You know, I'll use a very simple example. I asked the stakeholders, the business owners of systems, I say, how much business value do you get out of running an operating system and having to patch it and configure it and make sure that it's secure? How much business value does that add to you? As opposed to if you could go consume that as an enterprise service and have somebody else doing that for you in a more secure way. How much more could you then invest in the business process? Because that's what adds value for you is how do I start moving, you know, how do I start to add value through the application logic? So it's kind of thinking in my mind as we talk about sustainability and zero trust is that we're also talking about the ability to move the business stakeholder higher up in what would traditionally refer to as the OSI stack, in order to kind of get at what is actually adding value for the stakeholder. And then where we make our investments and, you know, we put our people, put our security tools is down in those lower levels where we can actually manage it more in more detail with more. I don't want to degrade it, you know, demean anybody's competency, but we have more we can invest in the competencies to actually manage those lower level functions, and we're able to go benefit from aggregating the data about what's going on to see it faster. You know, one of the big advantages of having CISA working on the CDM program and being able to provide some of these capabilities out to the agencies, various federal agencies, and also kind of being able to have them looking at it in aggregate is that great for queuing and slewing. So that if something bad is happening, now I can get that information and my vulnerability assessment team knows where to go look. And I can do that with the components as well as with our headquarters, networks operations and security center. So that's what I talk about when I think about sustainability. First, it's helping the application and system owner understand where they get real value. And so now they're not spending duplicate money on the cybersecurity. And then second, I get more bang for the cybersecurity dollar that I do spend.
What you're describing there, Ken, is I think, a pretty interesting way of looking at resourcing a cybersecurity strategy and then the tactical actions that have to take place to make it happen. Because for a long time, the conversation in the federal government kind of revolved around, well, and this was before, to be fair, this was before executives really had a sense that cybersecurity was something that they owned and that it wasn't just something that the technology people owned. But for a long time, the discussion was, well, if we're not being dramatically impacted by it, why do we have to spend a lot of money on it? Because we have obviously a lot of mission needs. That dynamic, that resourcing dynamics changed in the same way I think that you just described, the technology dynamic has changed. Is that a
I,
fair
I,
observation on my
I,
part?
I think that's right. I mean, you look at the recent impact, and it's something else that Bob said, and it kind of ties into this awareness that cybersecurity is everybody's business. But even for the technology people, it's even more important for us to go kind of do it, not just do as we say, but actually do it, right? We've got to be cognizant of it, because 80% of the exploits that are successful are still human related, right? The example here recently with the MGM exploit, a very clever social engineering exploit to get at a service desk trying to go give a privileged user some credentials to get onto the network. You know, that had that the best technology in the world wouldn't have stopped that. It was the users' awareness of what could be happening, and having a credible skepticism of that, and acting accordingly.
I think
Bob, you
Ken
were,
brings up,
oh,
yeah, I
yeah,
think
go
Ken
for
brings
it.
up a good point there, is that there's like that dual track. There's the piece that Director Easterly has been really emphasizing, is that from the IT industry standpoint, the industry really needs to incorporate secure by design practices, so that they're building safety into the design of software, that we're packaging and we're delivering IT products and software that is safe to use right out of the box. So the end consumer, those of us with, frankly, the least capability and resources to defend ourselves against cyber attacks, it's not left on us to be that first line of defense. That the industry can really take the lead in incorporating those safe design principles into the products that they provide. And we've actually, because the K through 12 industry, the sector is one of our priorities, under Director Eastley's 4 priorities. We've reached out specifically to the educational manufacturers, the IT manufacturers, and asked them to voluntarily take a pledge to ensure that they are providing those products, secure by design, when they're delivered to the educational sector, to our schools, to our administrations. And ever since we released this pledge last month, we've had 7 education manufacturers come on board and take that pledge, that they will work to provide those products to be safer. And so that reduces some of the burden on the end user, our critical education users, who are, frankly, managing a lot of very sensitive data, our kids' data, our teachers' data, the administration information. And the second piece of that, as Ken mentioned, is that human error part. That there's no blame here. The smartest people in the world get tricked by these phishing exploits, by these hackers. And with I think it was in 2020, they said 54% of the ransomware attacks were through phishing emails, 27% were through poor user practices. So Secure Our World and Cybersecurity Awareness Month is that emphasis on educating all of us on the steps that we can take to help reduce those risks, so that we're less likely to click on those links. The employee at the small business, the small or medium-sized business, where 82% of ransomware attacks were targeted, they won't click on that specific link to a phishing attack. That the small business will work with their suppliers and their vendors to make sure their systems are safe, so that something that happens at the vendor supplier or along the supply chain doesn't come down and cascade into the small business. So all these small education pieces that we can keep reinforcing help reduce the risk throughout the system.
And I don't expect you to have absolute definitive data at your fingertips, but just off the top of your head, do those numbers that Bob just described broadly for the kind of the categories of challenges, do those apply, do you think, in the federal government? Do those sound about right as far as the mix of how different problems happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from the standpoint of the day to day, I mean, the numbers kind of added up there, between the 50 and the 20 some, you're probably getting close to the 80%. Most of what I see, it does have that human element to it. But again, to Bob's point, sometimes it's the human element going all the way back into the design. You have a developer who says, "Hey, well, I'm going to go set up this Git site publicly so I can go do my coding fasting and testing." But they never shut it off. I mean, we've done a couple. We now got a fairly good pattern for running bug bounties, and some of the early things we were finding were actually the coder themselves not following some good practices, and so you end up with, fortunately, it was all dated old stuff, but you see, we find stuff that was out there just sitting out there in the wild that we can find and shut down, or just badly formed code that provided some vulnerabilities that we should have probably been caught before the system was ever fielded out for use. Inside the wire, we've got some pretty good protections. Again, going back to CDM, we've got the endpoint detection response capabilities out on just about everything that we have in the organization, and that's a pretty effective tool in kind of preventing some of the ransomware type things and the common things that you would find in terms of people clicking. But I've been pretty gratified by the fact that as an organization, we've done pretty well. We're running quarterly phishing exercises, and entertainingly, the NIST has what they call the fish scale for grading the complexity of phishing exercises. And we've actually been, I've been pretty pleased with the overall results for the department. So I think that campaign of building a culture of cybersecurity where it's not just the IT people who are thinking about it, but it's the whole population of the company has a mindset of, hey, this could impact the business of my organization. And I like to talk about it for private sector too, that companies, Bob mentioned the small business piece. Well, this is existential type, an existential type discussion, because small businesses that suffer, say, a ransomware attack, their percentages of not being able to recover from that, either because they basically can't afford to go get cyber insurance after such an event happens, or reputationally their businesses go off the cliff. um, that's business. That's business. That's board level discussion, right? So I think that's another important piece of this Secure Our World and the previous campaigns by CISA around secure by design. It's punctuating the fact that this is not, yes, it is an individual thing. We all have kind of, we need to be aware of how what we do on the network impacts upon the business. But it's also this reflection that it is existential for businesses to think about. And it's
Yeah.
not a conversation just for the guys in the IT shop back in the blinking lights and the beeps and squeaks. It's board level discussion because it can impact your business.
I want to apologize for the goofy grin that I have on my face, but when you talked about the fish scale, I was imagining the really cool graphics that you do with the fish scale in my mind, and I kind of went off track a little
I'm
bit.
not sure whether NIST has come up with that graphic, but it would be a very
Well,
effective tool. So
Actually,
we'll have to talk about
CISA
that
has
one.
a really
If you
good
haven't,
phishing graphic. You should check that
okay,
one
oh,
out.
we
Yeah.
have to
outstanding.
find out about that. Now,
There you
Bob,
go.
when Ken was talking about culture and building a culture of cybersecurity all throughout an organization, you were nodding your head really enthusiastically about that. What have you seen be successful in planting the seeds for that, at least, whether it's in a government organization? We're here to talk about public sector, obviously, but private sector organizations too. Culturally, I imagine are trying to build the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Director Easterly has preached corporate cyber responsibility when she goes out and talks with the business community. Having that leadership and the executive boards really take the issue seriously, so that the corporate level, the corporation itself, the business itself is looking at taking responsible steps throughout the organization. So that includes both the technical side of things and all the stuff that Ken works with that I can't speak too well, but are built, beefing up the IT pieces of the organization, educating the employees, bringing the issues and making the investments in the infrastructure that need to take place at the corporate level and the board level. All those steps that need to take place to ensure that the message throughout the organization is this is a serious issue. We all need to work together to make sure that we're reducing risk across the organization is really important. We've got a number of partners that we work with from the
Now, hopefully the hackers did not get in. And hopefully that was not an insider threat. We do have our first question. So let me, while we get Bob back, let me remind folks, if you have a question, send it anytime. I'm not gonna reserve necessarily just the end for Q&A. I'll include them throughout the course of the conversation. If you want to direct your question to either Bob or Ken, just let me know that, and I'm happy to do that. The first question, since I didn't say that ahead of time, I'm going to give it to you, Ken. The first question is, what roles can higher education institutions play in strengthening cyber resilience and supporting our cyber workforce? And I know that's important to you, and especially to a couple of your components in particular who work on a really, really regular basis with the academic sector.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think it's a it's a great point. I mean, there's a couple different angles to it. I mean, one first and foremost in my mind is just helping us to go build the diversity of thought in cybersecurity. One of the things that resonated very strongly with me as we started down this path with our cyber talent management system, our workforce system within DHS, was the idea that it was very expansive in terms of looking at the NIST's the NIST NICE framework, which is the cybersecurity workforce framework, the 46 work roles. And what struck me there is that it's not just saying, hey, that cybersecurity was limited to the people that are, on the defensive cyber or on the intel cyber or cyber intel or the if you're in the cyber maneuver space for DoD. It actually expanded the view and said, hey, good cybersecurity begins with actually defining good requirements up front. What are the cybersecurity requirements, as well as how you define the requirements for secure software development, for example. And then it extends all the way through, to the actual coders that are coding and writing software. Do they have a mindset about how to generate code in a secure way? Do they understand that? And actually, I've had the pleasure of working with a couple of colleges and universities that actually took that advice and started to tune their computer science programs. In fact, one college nearby in my hometown, the College of Charleston, actually established a secure software development degree track, which I thought was really pretty neat, right? But I think from a broad education perspective, it's not only having people understand the imperatives of building software securely, but giving them some framework about how to go about it. Right, that's the point of I think of say particularly a 4-year degree, is not simply not to teach a tool, but to go give them a framework to think about the problem. And so now we're starting to go see that, computer science programs or computer engineering programs, not thinking about their curriculum solely from the standpoint of how many languages they can cram into their brains, but thinking about what practices they can take in their role that would result in a more secure product at the end.
Bob, the
And
first
aside from
audience.
that, just go ahead. Well, just one other thing. I think that something that's become very visible to me and is very important to me too is we talk about cybersecurity and the fact that there are gaps in the workforce, and then you start to look at the statistics of who's in that population, right? And so in the general population, it's about a 51-49 split, men outnumbering women in the general population and the work population, 51-49. In cybersecurity, it's about 17% women. So in my mind, we can't afford to go leave that to be the status quo. We've got to figure out, why is that precipitous drop off occurring, and how do we start to fix it? And it seems like that drop off, just based on the data that I've read, is happening right after high school, early into college. So what can higher education do to help us work that? How can we start to go build the support systems even earlier than college, but in the primary and secondary education systems to kind of make cyber something that everyone can aspire to and be successful at?
Bob, the first audience question is, what roles can higher education institutions play in strengthening cyber resilience and supporting our cyber workforce? Ken had some ideas there, but I imagine as partnerships branch chief at CISA, this is something that's really important to you, the connectedness between academia and the public sector, not just CISA, but the entire public sector structure.
Yeah, sure is. And my internet connection freezing up every now and then is not a test. it's just not quite. My remote connection isn't quite playing games with me.
We
But,
worried that you had some kind of insider threat over there, Bob.
Yeah, no phishing hack as far as I know.
Good.
But obviously, the gap in the cyber workforce is something that is a concern, not just to CISA, but to all those small, medium-sized businesses and organizations that are constantly trying to compete for, the quality talent against the larger corporations and the larger institutions that have more resources to bring that talent on. So this is something that the director is very concerned about, and we're working throughout the entire cyber ecosystem to try to build that pipeline of talent through internships and through the work of our cyber defense and education training team in building partnerships across the educational sector to encourage more growth in the cybersecurity education curriculum, to working with girls who code and women in cybersecurity to encourage the STEM education and increased academic options for women and young girls in the cybersphere. So to try to continually to build the talent pool at a young age, so that those interests become something that our younger generation is really interested in. At the same time, we're talking with a lot of different organizations. We talk with HBCUs and work with them on partnerships and trying to encourage, people might have a shift in career changes and interest in moving over to the cybersecurity curriculum or the job market. And so we're working to make, we have some funding opportunities available through various programs and partnerships in the federal government to encourage people to take that different track in their career and work with the various universities and colleges on cyber programs to encourage people to take that opportunity to make a shift in their their career path and learn a new skill and come and join the cyber workforce. There's the range, 600,000, 750,000 vacant cyber positions out there. Point is, there's a lot of vacancies out there and a lot of need for talent to join the pool. So CISA is working through many different partners to encourage growth both on the academic side of more talent to come out of the system, and also on the career side for people to look at that, and also with organizations like I said, like the Boys and Girls Club of America, and try to encourage youth to look at STEM and to IT career paths as an option.
The next question from the audience has to do pretty directly with one of the statements that Leadership Connect made in the promotion for this event. I'm quoting from the abstract about our conversation today. Attendees will be equipped with actionable recommendations, among other things, to safeguard the trust that citizens place in government institutions. And this question is along that line. What tips do you have for public affairs practitioners to ensure public trust prior to, during, and after any incidents? I imagine, Bob, one of the points of the Secure Our World initiative is to get folks to understand the importance of cybersecurity in that prior to part that the questioner asked about. So there's just kind of this ongoing discussion about the importance of cybersecurity and the components of strong cyber defenses. Is that a fair read on my part?
Right. Yeah. And I think that I used to work at FEMA. I worked at NOAA, worked in the natural disaster area where you'd see hurricanes impacting certain parts of the country at certain parts of the year. You'd see extreme severe winter weather affecting certain parts of the country at certain parts of the year. I like to remind people that cyber attacks can affect anyone at any time, at any part of the country, at any time of the year. It's something that's out there 24/7, not to scare people, just to encourage the idea that we all have to be working together all the time to encourage increased actions, increased steps that we can all take to reduce our cyber risk. Strong passwords and using password managers, enabling multi-factor authentication, updating your software and enabling automatic updates, recognizing reporting phishing. Those are some 4 simple steps that, and I will say simple, 4 steps that we can take to reduce our cyber risk. However, part of the whole goal of Cybersecurity Awareness Month and Secure Our World is to offer resources and tools that we can all use to ensure that we can all take those steps, because for some people those aren't so easy to undertake, and we're trying to create simple, easy to use tools through tip sheets and animated videos and webinar series that we put out to encourage those actions to be taken. And we're encouraging, the small business community, the technology community, friends and family, community groups, neighborhood groups, to all have these conversations, because at any point in time where you're a connected organization or a connected individual or family, there is the risk that's out there, the threats that are posed by these actors who frankly don't really, they're not going to wait till you update your software. They're going to act when they want to act. So how can we all work together collectively to reduce that risk? And that includes across the board: federal, state, local government, tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, anywhere where there's the opportunity for risk, we need to take action to put defenses up against that risk.
That's
Francis,
yeah, go for it, Ken.
Francis, if I could jump in. So, yeah, I think the questioner was saying, the actionable steps that to help the public regain their confidence or have confidence in what the government's doing. And I really do. That resonates strongly with me because of a couple things. A couple things that we've tried to do within the department. First is making sure that we're trying to go do what we say, right? We tell people to go do things in cybersecurity. Are we doing them ourselves? So really trying to measure ourselves to make sure that we are doing the best we can to go meet that same standard. That's a fair ask of the public. The second is having confidence in our ability to respond to an incident, and transparency in what's going on, and making sure we're following the law where reporting is required. And making sure that we're doing the due diligence to go protect the information that's been entrusted to us by the public. I would say too, going after that idea of how do we start to go, demonstrate that we are building the credibility of our cybersecurity, is how we use our contracting to actually build up the industry that supports us. So I think we touched briefly on it when I was on your show about the cyber hygiene work that we were doing in DHS, and that was oriented around a secretary's priority to use our contracting to raise the cybersecurity posture of our industry base. And what we had found was that some of the other techniques that were being approached, like the way that DoD was working with their cybersecurity maturity model certification, kind of the third-party assessment approach, wouldn't really work with our industry base of DHS. We have the great pleasure, I think, of having a tremendous percentage. I believe the last number I heard is like $6 billion a year of small business prime contracts for DHS, which is a point of pride for the department, and particularly for justifiably for our procurement shop. But those shops, those organizations very often don't have the maturity of cybersecurity that we would like them to have. And so our approach was, how do we start to go understand and match the complexity of the work that they're proposing to do in a contract with their maturity as a cybersecurity organization, to understand whether there's a mismatch in those two. And if there is a mismatch, how do we start to assess that risk before we award a contract? And so we've been working very hard to go develop up the mechanism for measuring our existing contractor base, which we were successful in implementing this past year in 2023, fiscal 2023. But now we also have, and I don't want to go jump ahead of it, but we've developed up a contract evaluation, a source selection evaluation factor around this cyber hygiene that we're going to be able to implement without any rulemaking being necessary. But it'll start helping us to go look at this in advance of a contract award. And so we're trying to take steps that we can do now. Let's just start. And in my mind, that's what starts to build the public's confidence. If they can just see the government moving out to do the things that we're asking them to do, and we're starting to hold ourselves to the same standards, I think that goes a long ways. And are we going to hit the mark every time? Probably not. But the point is that if we don't start, then we're never going to get there.
Shameless
Ken
plug
mentioned.
for, let me give it my shameless
Yep,
plug
go ahead.
for
Shameless
it.
plug, good.
and then I want you to throw your idea in. Ken was on the FedGov Today television show. What was it, like June or July, something like that, I think, Ken?
I think that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
July,
and
I think, July.
for folks that would like to see it that haven't seen it, it's in the archives at fedgovtoday.com. There's a little search bar up there. You can search on Ken Bible and it'll come right up. Bob, what did you want to add? Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to add to something important Ken mentioned, because CISA is not a big regulatory agency. So our strength comes in the partnerships that we create and developed with the various stakeholders, state, local, tribal governments, private sector. And one of the most important things that we offer, in addition to all the free resources that our regional offices bring to those stakeholders throughout the nation, is the ability to share information based on threats that we receive information for. So, as Ken mentioned earlier about who you're reporting incidents to, we are not a law enforcement agency. However, we work with a number of different stakeholders to identify known vulnerabilities. And those known vulnerabilities that we're sharing across the whole cybersecurity enterprise are critical to anyone who has an IT system to have knowledge of, so that they can take the necessary patches before bad things happen. And our new pre-ransomware notification initiative is one where we're able to share information about vulnerabilities with potentially impacted entities, businesses, organizations, so that they can take action previous to any kind of ransomware attack taking place, saving them, but on average, $4.5 million per ransomware attack or what have you. Those, and to date, we've issued over 700 pre-ransomware notifications to organizations and entities that have literally saved them from being impacted by potential ransomware attackers. So that kind of partnership in trust between us and the stakeholders has been something that we've had to grow. We all know that federal government can suffer from that lack of trust that you mentioned earlier, but we have taken it upon ourselves, and through the DHS arms, CISA has worked with these partners to help build those strong relationships, so that we're constantly sharing information back and forth. We're not attributing to anybody that a vulnerability may exist, but we are providing that information so that others can take action and take proactive action, which is the important thing.
The next question from the audience gets at the elephant in the room. Everybody and his brother is talking about artificial intelligence, and in particular generative AI. This question is as follows. A multitude of vendors and organizations are touting their plethora of benefits related to AI and generative AI. Where does this group fall within the spectrum from no way Jose to hesitate and be left behind? I think I'll exercise moderator's prerogative and direct that question a different way too, and that is, what are the potential benefits and risks to manage around artificial intelligence related to cybersecurity? Either one of you want to grab onto that one first?
I don't mind jumping on that one, Bob. Feel free to jump in with me. I mean, this is it's moving faster than I think anyone ever anticipated would occur, right? And this is a typical challenge of any new technology, is the rush to monetize it, and sometimes that comes at the expense of really thinking through the cybersecurity behind it. But it poses a whole unique set of risks that we really don't know how to quantify yet. So I often talk about the fact that it was great work, and I really appreciate the work by NIST to publish the RMF framework for AI. But that framework was more around procedural things. What are the types of things you should think about, right? It isn't like an 853 or 80171 with a set of controls that I can actually implement and measure. So I like to say that I know how to go secure the system upon which the AI rides, but I have no control framework by which to go actually say that a particular AI algorithm is secure. And a lot of that is probably going to happen on the back end in terms of the data that's used to train it and how securely was that data protected during that training process. And then how do I start to go come up with the right kinds of testing on the front end of it to ensure that the programming hasn't actually embedded a bias within the algorithm. So this is a really dynamic field, and I think from a cybersecurity perspective, a lot of unknowns that still have to be worked through. But going to your point about where does it sit on that spectrum between no way Jose and Ali Ali, all is free. I think we're falling on the side, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of my boss on this. So CIO Eric Heisen is also now headed by Secretary Mayorkas as the Chief AI Officer for the Department of Homeland Security, and I really think he had a very prudent approach here, saying that, hey, we were better off trying to go educate our user base, educate our employees, and allow them to go start to explore the capabilities of these generative tools, but do it with some left and right lateral guidelines, some guardrails. And a lot of that has to do with, hey, we're not going to allow people to go put publicly available information into these generative AI tools. We're also not going to download an app onto DHS gear. We're going to focus it on use of the web-based versions. And my team also working through now, how do we go look at the various risks associated with the different tools, everything from does it actually perform a valid use case, or is there a valid use case to bring that generative AI in, all the way through to what's in the user agreement in terms of how that data is going to be used to train subsequent models, or how the data is stored, or where the data is stored on the back end. So we've got some prudent measures to start to go allow the employees to begin to learn and to educate them on how these tools can affect their work. The bottom line is that, just as with many new technologies, you think about 20 years ago in the Google search line. Well, in probably 2 years, that model will be completely gone, and generative AI will be as ubiquitous as the single line for entering on Bing or in Google or any other search engine. So I think that it's to the point of the question, it's probably fruitless to say we're going to go bury our heads in the sand and pretend like it's going to go away. Rather, let's take some prudential measures to avoid the risk. Let's learn where it will add value for us, and let's figure out how we take it on board without putting the department's data at risk.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that, other than, I mean, with every new technology that comes along, it obviously, poses some, great opportunities, and but it also poses, risks and challenges. So, CISA looks to, support the administration's efforts to kind of leverage both the promise for AI for the good, and mitigating any of the risks that might be posed by something as rapidly evolving as AI. I know that the administration did get, commitments from, seven leading companies to commit to rigorous and, transparent testing and assessments of product safety and safeguards to ensure that their systems are secure against cyber and other national security threats, and new mechanisms to promote trust and reduce any kind of social harms that may come from AI type products. And that includes sharing that information through labeling and content that is altered and generated by AI. So there seems to be a real effort to help prevent the bias and discrimination that can often happen with as it's kind of information in is pushing information out. And so this is a supporter of the administration's efforts to to help grow this, but also recognize the challenges and the risks that are associated with these kind of technologies, and work across the federal family to make sure that we're all moving that direction.
My thanks to the questioner for that question, for sending it in. The next one touches on something that each of you have talked about so far in our conversation today, and I think it's really encouraging. Everybody mentions at some point during every conversation about cybersecurity the state of the workforce. What would you suggest that a 53-year-old woman do who just received a bachelor's in cybersecurity, but with no cyber experience, to break into the cyber career field? And I guess I would broaden that a little bit too, to just ask each of you to maybe share some stories about ways that you've seen folks break into this field when there's such a desperate need for talent to do exactly that, to get new blood into this field. Ken, you want to go first on that one, please?
No, I'm happy to happy to touch on that one. I mean, so I mentioned our cyber talent management system earlier, and one of the really powerful mechanisms out of that, probably one that I've leveraged more than anything else, was this idea that there was an entry track that was available for the cyber talent management system. So, this fallacy that was out there, and we'd always kind of joke about it, that you wanted the entry level candidate with 5 years experience. Well, they don't exist. Right. So how did this entry level career track within the cyber talent management system allowed us to take someone who had perhaps a degree or just had some interest in cybersecurity and allow them to come in and be hired into these entry tracks. And then through the cyber talent management system, kind of work their way from the entry level into a developmental track. And then they spend some time there and then be able to have the opportunity to compete. And they're being assessed for their capabilities in each one of these areas. This was the power of the process. It was a different title of law under which we were executing this cyber talent management system. And the other feature of this cyber talent management system, which is really powerful, is that continuing education is a condition of employment. So there's actually funding associated with individuals being able to go get certifications or to have training, and advances within it are actually measured on contribution to mission. So it's not a time-bound thing. It's about what is the individual able to come in, get involved in, contribute to the mission. So my advice is for this individual you spoke of, take a look at the cyber talent management system site. Go do an assessment, get yourself in the mix for one of those entry level tracks, and see where you can go. We started out with CISTA and the CIO for headquarters CIO as the two organizations that were participating in hiring from it. But I think now we've opened it up. I think FEMA is hiring under it. Even our headquarters policy shop is starting to go hire positions under CTMS. I think TSA is getting set if they're not already hiring. So we're starting to expand how we're using this cyber talent management system. But importantly to this question, that entry level track, I mean, it's not going to be like going out here to industry and finding the big bucks and immediately going out, but it's also those are going to be hard to find with no experience.
Mm-hmm.
So this entry level track allowed somebody to come in who had the aptitude to be able to start in the field and grow their credentials as they're learning. And it's been a tremendous. I've hired double digits of entry level candidates. Because to me, it was much easier for me and probably more productive, given the changes that are happening in the IT landscape. We just talked about the emergence of AI, and what we're doing even with cyber hygiene. But what it predicated was that we're probably easier to go hire somebody and train them what we need them to know, than to go out here and try to find an entry level candidate who knows everything we need them to know.
Mm-hmm. I know that your colleague, Charlie Armstrong, the CIO at FEMA, has an authorization for hiring from CTMS too. So that's
right.
not exhausted by any stretch, but that's another location inside DHS where that is coming online too. Bob, what you want to add anything to what this person might want to think about
Yeah.
to try to establish, or anybody who wants to establish themselves in a cyber career?
Yeah, I think Ken had some great advice, so I certainly would pile on to that. CISA has a number of career fairs throughout the year where we've been looking for a variety of talent. The director has like a goal of, I think it's a 30% increase in hiring women into the workforce by 2030. So we're really trying to diversify, the talent across the agency. I think that I didn't come into CISA with a lot of cyber background, but my skills were in partnerships and stakeholder engagement and such like that. So sometimes you utilize some of the other skills you have to get into an organization that kind of piggybacks onto these new skills you have. The other thing I would say is that there's a lot of organizations out there that really need help, and um, if you wanted to build up your actual skill set, which she already obviously has the academic training in, and she's building towards that, work with some of these organizations to kind of build those skill sets. You're certainly helping them, and when it's a really tight market out there for this talent, and you're helping yourself by building those skills, and can bring that additional skill set to the table of working with diverse organizations and such, because they really need the help, and a lot of them are what we call target rich, resource poor organizations, where they're kind of at the mercy of these bad actors who want to do them harm, because they know they don't have a lot of protections in place to stop that from happening. So they are looking for folks to help them out with cyber skills, and that's a good place to kind of get some skills behind you. But I think Ken has some great suggestions there, and I agree with that.
I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to, because we're coming to the close of this conversation. I'm going to have to put the ticker on, and for this next question, as we watch the clock till we get to the end of the conversation. And Bob, this one didn't specifically ask for you, but it kind of has your name on it. What advice or insights can you offer to nonprofit organizations that haven't prioritized cybersecurity in their initiatives? What concrete consequences might they face if they continue to neglect this aspect of their operations? I imagine these are the kind of folks that you talk to all the time in your role,
Right.
working on
Yeah.
partnerships.
Yeah, as I mentioned, cyber target rich, resource poor. A lot of the NGOs, nonprofit organizations that we work with, small governments, rural governments, they just don't have the capabilities and the resources to invest a lot into their IT infrastructure. So they're the perfect partner for us to work with our regional offices. Our regional offices have cybersecurity special advisors, protective security advisors, election security advisors, as emergency communication advisors, chemical safety advisors, a whole range of subject matter experts who are offering free resources for those organizations that don't have those resources. So reach out to our regional offices. They'll be able to sit down, assess where you are, assess where you want to go, talk about where you should go, offer some of the free resources that we have that Ken mentioned, our cyber hygiene services that are really critical to keep monitoring your systems. We have vulnerability analyses that can provide you with monthly reports on where potential vulnerabilities are, all free. And those are the kind of resources that you can reach out to. Go to the regions, CISA regions. Fabulous opportunity to gather resources and expertise at no cost.
I want to wrap up just by thanking both of you for taking time to talk to us today about all of these things that are going on in the world of cyber. There's a lot, and we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm really grateful to get both of your insights. Ken Bible of DHS, Bob Nadeau of CISA. Really appreciate your time today, gentlemen. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francis.
Appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for watching today, and my thanks to Leadership Connect for inviting me to be a part of this. I look forward to the next one, and I look forward to joining you on FedGov Today TV. Thanks for watching today.